Brother Ashiq from New York says that he works in a company doing some office work, and he is saying that some aspects of his company and some of their policies and some of their procedures are unethical. He goes into a lot of detail, but just to be like vague about this, he says that they might change some numbers, on their accounting in order for tax purposes, and it's overlooked. Everybody knows about this. So he says that his actual job is not directly involved in anything that's shady, but he's wondering that does he come under supporting haram, and hence he's worried about his rizq. Added to this, Brother Ridwan says that he's working as an Uber Eats driver, and as a part of his job, obviously he's delivering food parcels, and no doubt sometimes there's going to be some haram in those parcels. He just picks up the food and he delivers it, and that's his only source of income. So he's wondering the Shari'i rulings on that. And Brother Salman says that he's working as a manager in an ice cream factory, and or maybe some of the flavors, they add some alcohol to their products, and so he is the manager and he must oversee the entire factory, which includes this aspect of the alcohol. So he's worried, is it halal to work in such a factory as a manager?
وما أرسلنا من قبلك إلا رجالا نوحي إليهم فاسألوا أهل الذكر إن كنتم لا تعلمون.
Now, I put all of these questions together, and of course, there's a lot more questions of such a nature. And the overall problem comes that there are people that are working in industries, and there's an element of haram going on somewhere in those industries. And they're all worried about their sustenance, the purity of their rizq, the purity of the halalness, if you like, or if you want me to make a pun on it, how risky is the rizq, in risky business. So they're worried that are they coming under the prohibition of Islam when Allah says in the Quran, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Cooperate in goodness and piety, and do not cooperate in evil and transgression. And of course, this is a basic rule that understood. I mean, you should not help somebody do haram, right? This is understood. And there are many evidences for this. And again, just so that we are familiar with these evidences, for example, in Sunan al-Nisa'i, Ka'b ibn Ujra narrates that the Prophet ﷺ came out to us one day, and we were a group of people sitting there, and he said, listen to me, you shall see after me rulers that are evil rulers. And whoever enters into those evil rulers' palaces and agrees with them and helps them in their dhulm, in their injustice, then they have nothing to do with me and I have nothing to do with them. And they shall not drink from my fountain. And whoever does not enter and does not help them and does not do injustice with them and does not affirm their lies, then that is the person who is with me and I am with him. So this is a hadith in Sunan al-Nisa'i, which basically the Prophet is saying, look, the ruler might be evil. If you're helping the ruler, you're also evil. If you're doing directly the dhulm of the ruler, you're also evil. So this is the whole concept of helping one another in piety, not helping one another in sin and harm. And our Prophet also said the famous hadith, which is in the authentic books of the Sahih, that the Prophet said, whoever calls people to good and guidance shall get the reward of those who follow him without diminishing their reward. And whoever calls people to bad, to misguidance, to dalala, shall have the sin of those who are following him without diminishing their own sins. They're all going to be getting the sins. So, and of course in the famous hadith as well, that there are 10 people that are accursed when it comes to alcohol, and he mentioned everybody involved with the trade, right? Even the one who's transporting it, and the one who's selling it, and the one who's buying it, and the one who's pouring it. So basically the entire industry is accursed. It's not just the one who drinks it, it's the one who's giving the bottle of wine. He goes, here, if this is wine, and he gives it and he's selling it. Everybody is cursed. So clearly our Sharia wants to shut the direct avenues of evil. Now, theoretically, that's a great concept, and of course we understand it. The point of the Sharia is clear. But the issue then comes that there are many gradations of helping. And what exactly does it mean to help in evil? How directly must we be involved in that in order for it to become haram? And it is a spectrum, no doubt about it, that at one level you have pure halal, on the other level you have pure haram, and in the middle there are going to be gradations, some of which will be makruh, some of which will be minor sins, some of which will be a major sin. And if you read the treatises of our fuqaha, one finds that this is something that even our modern ulama, they say that we need to extrapolate more about what exactly does it mean helping in evil. Because as we said, the examples that the books of fiqh typically give are very crystal clear. For example, giving somebody alcohol to drink or selling somebody alcohol. Okay, but in our modern world, especially as a minority in Western lands, pretty much all of our companies, with almost without exception, dare I say without exception, there will be elements of haram in those corporations. There's going to be elements of things that are not ethical or not moral according to our sharia. So does our being there actually make it absolutely haram? Are we helping, aiding and abetting a corporation in all of its sin if our job is halal? And the fact of the matter is that this is a very detailed discussion, and our modern ulama have attempted to extrapolate and given fatwa on a case-by-case basis. And of the institutes and of the bodies of fiqh that have attempted to do so is the American Muslim Jurists Association, AMJA, which has discussed this issue in some detail and given some good generic guidelines. But again, these are all generic guidelines. And in a few years ago, they held a conference in which they talked about, this level of injustice or this level of haram and what constitutes the haram upon the individual when the company might be doing something that is haram. And they said that we can broadly categorize helping one another in evil, doing evil, we can broadly categorize it into 4 categories. Number 1, they said mubashara and maqsuda. It is immediate and it is intended. You are directly involved and you are intending to be involved. It is direct and it is intended. For example, to give somebody a cup of wine with the intention that that person will directly drink the wine. So you are directly involved and you are intending for that person to do this. This is category 1. Category 2 is that it is direct, but you are not intending. It's not your intention to help, but it is still direct. And an example for this is somebody who sells the wine, and the person will drink it later on. You're not directly involved. Or somebody who sells drug paraphernalia, so there's how you consume drugs. It involves certain things that you use, certain things to burn, certain things to ingest. There is no function of these items except for drug usage. The person might sell it and say, hey, it's not happening on my premises, right? But this is direct, but it is not intended, right? So this is the second category. Or to sell a crucifix, like there are Muslims that sell crosses and they say, oh look, I'm not worshipping other than Allah, I'm simply selling, and then they're doing what they are doing. So this is second category. The third category is that it is intended, but it is not direct. You intend to do something haram, but what you are doing is something ambiguous and could be used for halal, but your intention is haram. So for example, you pay somebody money to use the money to purchase haram, to purchase drugs, to purchase the alcohol, let's say, right? So you might not directly be involved, but you intend to be involved, right? So it is intended, but it is not direct. So this is the third category. And the fourth category, they said, neither is it direct nor is it intended. Out of these 4, they said the first 3 are all haram. Okay? It is direct and intended. It is direct and unintended. It is intended but indirectly. So all of the, and I gave examples for those, right? So if you intend to do something haram, you want to be involved in this haram, then clearly it is not allowed. However, if you are doing something that inevitably will be haram and it has no purpose except haram, like selling drug paraphernalia or selling crucifixes, there is no useful, thing that is going to happen with these drug paraphernalia. Nobody purchases these items except to use for ingesting harmful substances. So for you to get involved in this business, right, it is haram completely. The fourth fourth category, غير مباشرة ولا مقصودة. It is neither direct nor is it intended. This is where they said the leeway. This is where they said there's a spectrum of opinion, and they said generically it would be allowed, and no doubt some would be more haram than others, but more haram is a harsh word here, yani more gray, let's say, more ambiguous, and maybe leaning towards the haram than others. But here is where, generally speaking, they said in a minority situation we can be a little bit more lax. Other scholars have looked at it from different angles, and they have asked us to consider 5 different things. So to look at 5 different things before you pronounce a verdict on whether you think your job is haram or halal, we look at it from multiple angles. First and foremost, again, there's some overlap with the previous Amjad's fatwa, but still, this is another researcher that appeals to me. So this researcher said, number 1, you look at whether you are directly involved or not. Clearly, if you are directly involved in aiding and abetting something that is unethical, that is immoral, that is illegal, something that is haram in our sharia, you're directly involved in it. Clearly, this is something that we cannot get out of and say that it is haram. To be involved in haram is haram. To help the haram directly, you are directly involved in, a'udhu billah, murder, or a robbery, or elaborate Ponzi scheme, and you know it, and you're involved with it, and you're doctoring the books and everything. You're involved in a scam. Clearly, if you're in on a plot, then you share the sin of the plot as well. Or if you're removed by some degrees, you are manufacturing knives, okay? You're selling glasses, and the knife can be used to cut vegetables, and somebody can use it to commit a sin and a murder. You're selling glasses, somebody can use the glasses for drinking and halal, and somebody can use it for haram. This is a generic glass, for example, right? So clearly, you look at the one who's directly involved in a very different way than the one who's indirectly. So this is the first thing you look at. The second thing you look at is, what is your intention? What is your own frame of mind and intention? Is your intention to get involved in something that is unethical, criminal, haram? Is that the purpose of your career? Is that the entire career is based around it? Actions are judged by intentions. Or you're trying to make something halal and things are happening beyond your control. It's not your intention, it's not your goal, it's not there. And no doubt, when you try to maintain your purity and you try your best to be as halal as possible, then something happens that is haram. It is very different than getting involved in a career that is inherently haram, and you know it is haram and you have no problems with it being haram. So we also look at your niyyah as well. That's the second thing we look at. The third thing we look at is the quantity of this haram. So what if it's indirect and it is not, so we're going one by one, right? So there's 5 things. Number 1, it must be indirect. Number 2, it cannot be your intention. Number 3, we also look at the quantity of haram. And this is a very key factor, especially in minority situations. Whether the business you're involved with is predominantly unethical, it is lying, it is cheating, it is stealing, or it is incidentally, haram from our perspective. So for example, a question that came to a number of security councils around the fatwa councils around the globe is security council, because the question is security. The mind was going to security. Security guard is saying that I have been hired to protect a building, to wander around the building, and there's shops, and one of them is a bank. There's an ATM with a bank attached to it, right? Now, my job is security, and I'm wandering around, as a security guard, and there's clothes manufacturing, there's shoes, like any supermarket or mall, and there's also a booth that has the bank in it. My job is not just for the bank, it is for the entire shopping mall. And pretty much all of the fatwa councils around the globe have said that, well, this is not an intentional, direct, predominantly haram enterprise. Your job overall is halal, and there's an element here that definitely is not praiseworthy, because we don't like the banks that are involved in riba, but your job is protection of civic order. It's not to defend the institution of riba, right? We look at what you're doing, and that is, even the bank is haram, but it is also haram to rob the bank. Just because the bank is doing haram, it doesn't mean that, which is giving riba, it doesn't mean that it is permissible to then go and rob. So if the security guard is being a generic, officer of the law and upholding civic security, well then overall we shall overlook this. Also, the ice cream factory owner. By the way, what a great job to be a manager of an ice cream factory. I have to say, brother, I'm kind of jealous of you in a positive way, halal way. I love ice cream, so I can only imagine, mashallah, the perks of your job, just eating and taste testing all day. Alhamdulillah, mashallah. What a beautiful job there is, mashallah. So our brother who runs an ice cream manufacturing plant, right, mashallah, or he's a manager. Let's say the company hired him, he works his way up, and mashallah, now he is the manager of the factory. Now he is saying, ice cream, alhamdulillah, the bulk of ice cream is halal, alhamdulillah, right? 99% or 95% of the flavors of his company are halal, but there might be one flavor that has added, let's say, rum, right? So they add some containers of rum into a vast amount of alcohol, of ice cream. For us, that flavor would not be allowed. I've given longer lectures about having quantities of alcohol, and you can listen to that. But there's no question that when you add alcohol as a flavor to a food and you want to taste that flavor, that is haram. You add rum or whiskey or brandy or any type of alcoholic drink with the intention of the taste remaining, there's no question that final substance is haram for us to eat or drink. But now this person is emailing and saying that he is the manager of a factory that is producing the ice cream, and understandably the bulk of his ice cream is completely halal, but as the manager he has to sign away all of the import and export, what's coming in, what's coming out, and he's overseeing, and one of the vats out of hundreds of vats is going to have the alcohol in it. So we look at now the quantity and whether it is predominantly halal or whether it is incidental, and the fatwa of Amja and in fact I do not know of any fatwa council that has given anything to the contrary, that when there is a small amount of haram, like this case over here, then we cannot say that the entire job is haram. He tries his best to get out of being directly involved, but overall he is the manager, and there's going to be some level of involvement. He cannot just walk away from everything to do with that. He's going to sign the sheets at the end of the day. He's going to, make sure that everything is happening. So no doubt that element is definitely not good, but his entire job cannot be made haram simply because one of the flavors of one of the ice creams has a percentage of alcohol in it. So this, we can say the same applies to the Uber driver, right? Or the Uber Eats driver. So the Uber driver, even the Uber driver, let's say, the Uber driver, he is taking passengers, and sometimes the passengers are carrying alcohol with them. So he is helping in transporting alcohol, but here's the point. Not only that was not his, so go back to all three of these, right? So here we have, actually in this case, he is directly involved, but it is no intention. He didn't sign up to transport alcohol, and then it is something that is incidental, and the quantity is minuscule. Out of 20 passengers a day, maybe one of them might be carrying alcohol, and he doesn't even know about it. So it's neither his intention, and it is also a negligible amount. That being the case, the fatwa given is that it is overlooked because he didn't. So here's the point. If he signed up to be a truck driver for Budweiser, Budweiser is the beer company of America for those that are watching outside of America. So if he signed up to be a truck driver for Budweiser, that is completely haram. But he's now an Uber driver or an Uber Eats. And in Uber Eats, he's going to be delivering maybe 50 packages of food, right? The bulk of the food packages are not going to have alcohol in them. Maybe one or two are going to, but he is signing up to be just the delivery man, and his goal is not to deliver haram and alcohol. His goal is just to be the delivery and to gain some money in this regard. So once again, Amja and others have given the fatwa that we overlook a negligible amount here. It's a small amount. It's not his primary thing. It's a incidental. It is not maqsuda. It's not intended, and it is something that is trivial. And so that which is incidental does not take the same ruling as that which is direct and intended, and that which is small quantity does not take the same ruling as that which is the predominant quantity. So this is the third thing that we look at. So the first thing we said is that we look at whether it's direct or indirect. The second thing, we look at your intention. What is exactly your intention in doing your job? And number three, we look at the quantity. Number four, another thing we look at. So one of our brothers emailed in the initial email, he asked, that they're basically, to be very explicit here, they're kind of fudging the numbers for the IRS or whatever, that they're making some things more or less for, and he feels guilty, like, why am I involved in all of this? So and again, there's no question that we have to be ethical as Muslims. There's no question that as Muslims we raise the bar and everything should be legit and 100%. At the same time, when an entire industry is doing something that everybody knows, it's kind of an open secret, the Sharia says MAQAMAT bihil balwa, everybody's doing it, then once again the Sharia will be a little bit more lax here. So for example, the point here comes that when an industry is known overall to do something that is not in the best, following the technical letter of the law. I mean, I'll give you an example. I had a friend, in the fish business, fish industry, and they have a whole bunch of laws about the length of the fish and the age, or I don't know all of these things and whatnot. And it's well known, he said to me, that they have an 18-inch or 20-inch or whatever it might be, and if it's an half an inch or more, everybody knows you're not going to be that pedantic or that accurate, and nobody's going to make a big deal if we just overlook it. The point is that, and again, I'm being very clear here, obviously we want to obey every single rule as much as possible. At the same time, when something like this becomes the norm in an industry, right? So you're saying that in your industry or whatever it is, I don't understand, for whatever purposes, they increase the weight of the package or whatever to get some whatever it might be. You're not involved, you're saying. You're doing your job in the office, but that portions of the company are doing things that are in that gray area. So here, once again, we say, actually in this case, you are not directly involved. In this case, it is not even your intention to do that. And also in this case, it is something that your company or whatever it is, it's doing something that it should not do. But apparently, this is the norm in that particular industry, that everybody knows it goes on, and they kind of sort of turn a blind eye. Nobody really gets penalized for doing it. So for you to do your halal job in your cubicle, and your company's doing something outside of your area, and you're not directly involved with, you cannot, and nobody can say your job becomes haram because of something the company is doing that is unethical. You obviously should not get involved in that. But to what level of cooperation? So by the way, for example, not directly related, but it is still directly related. Some of these more, radical militant groups, right? They would justify, the mass, murder of entire populations, and even the takfir of Muslims living in non-Muslim lands. They would say, you guys aren't Muslim. They would say to us, this is 10 years ago when all of these movements were going on, they would say to us, you're not Muslim. Why? What have we done? We're praying Salah, Alhamdulillah, Quran, Tahajjud, Qiyam, everything. Why are we not Muslim? Because you're living in a land that has done haram, and has invaded, and has plundered and pillaged, and you're giving taxes to them. And Allah says, do not help in any transgression and whatnot. So notice here, if you were to take this rule to that level, your existence on earth is aiding and abetting some type of injustice, right? It can be also flipped around and saying, well, you're buying and selling products that are indirectly supporting the system. You cannot be completely disconnected from human society. And at some level, something can be extrapolated where you're buying and selling to somebody who's then helping somebody who's doing something to somebody who's doing a haram. You cannot consider an nth degree of separation to make your actual job haram. Just because you live in America or live in a Western land that might be doing something militarily, your existence doesn't become haram, brothers and sisters. Your entire job and career does not become haram. So we have to also see, the level of distance between you and this haram. How prevalent is it? Is it something that is generic and everybody? So, by the way, here in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever enters in upon the zalim and helps him is sinful. However, the entire country of that zalim is somehow tacitly, in the end of the day, giving their taxes to him, allowing him to exist. The Prophet ﷺ did not say the whole country is going to hell, the whole country is Jahannam. No, because there's levels of cooperation, levels of distancing yourself from dhulm. And the one who enters into the palace willingly, knowingly, wanting to help, believing the lies, supporting the ruler in the dhulm, cannot be compared to the peasant who's giving the taxes to this tyrannical ruler, and he cannot do anything about that. And so this hadith is actually an evidence against those radical groups, that the Prophet ﷺ only criticized the one who walks into the palace and butters up the ruler, gets involved in his entourage. That is helping in evil. You cannot take the entire population and say you're all leaving the fold of Islam because of this. So that's another point we look at. And then the final point that we'll also look at, so the fifth point we'll say, is what are the alternatives? And is this your only source of income? I.e., how necessary is this source of income for you, and are there alternatives? So we also look at that aspect as well, because as the Sharia says, الضرورة تقدر بقدرها, that those that are in dire need, situations that have darura, you look at the darura, you look at the direness of the situation, and you change the fatwa based upon that. So the person who's living on the streets and the only job he has is to be in the supermarket and to be at the grocery store, and in the grocery store they will sell pork and they will sell alcohol, we will say to this person, there's no doubt that the default is your job should not be done. But you're living on the streets, for example, you're not being able to pay your rent. Okay, in the meantime, do this job and then make dua to Allah and try to find a halal job. So we'll give a temporary concession because the person has no alternative. So we look at the fifth point as well, and that is, how needed is this job? Versus, for example, a teenager who is living in a comfortable upper middle class home, he just wants some money to purchase the latest PS4 or Xbox or iPad or iPhone or whatever the latest gadget is, and his parents say, yeah, go ahead and find a job and we're fine with that. This teenager who doesn't need money to pay rent, we would say to him, no way you're going to be bagging haram, you're going to be selling alcohol, and even if the grocery store has 90% halal but the alcohol is there, why would you do that? You don't need the money. Go find a job that is not selling alcohol, because selling alcohol is obviously you're picking up the bottle and you're scanning it and you're selling it. Clearly that's not something the Sharia wants you to do. So all of these 5 points will be looked at, and look yourself, dear brother or dear sister, in your corporation, in your career, and try your best to minimize. And in the end of the day, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ, fear Allah as much as you can. Be reasonable, don't be unreasonable, and understand the difference between intending haram and a predominant career that is haram, and aiding and abetting haram directly, versus distancing yourself and something happening in your vicinity, in your corporation, you're not exactly involved with it, your job itself is halal. There's many factors to look at, and if we were to go to the nth degree, then in reality every single one of our lives, basically in the entire world, we can extrapolate something is happening that we're doing, aiding and abetting to the nth degree, something haram. The Sharia is not unreasonable. Fear Allah as much as you can, be reasonable, ask the scholars of your locality and ask the other people in your field as well about your concerns and see what they say. Generally speaking, as we said, minuscule amounts of incidental and unintentional things that are not allowed in the Sharia shall be overlooked, as long as the bulk of your career is halal and you are doing that which is halal and you're being paid for that which is halal. Then فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for all of us to earn a halal rizq, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.
فيا ذلي ويا خجلي إذا ما قال لي ربي أما استحييته تعصيني ولا تخشى من العتب وتخفي الذنب عن خلقي وتأبى في الهوى قربي فتب مما جنيت عسى تعود إلى رضا الرب تعود إلى رضا الرب